Most guides teach you how to survive. This one is different. We're studying the reverse instruction manual, written by 10 people who found the express lane to a final exit. These are the field notes from the other side of common sense. Quick disclaimer. These are real stories, fatal endings. This is a powerful warning. Don't add your own chapter. 1. You're on Lake Washington. Your jet ski battery is dead. You have a charger. What do you absolutely not do? This guy did it. And in doing so, he provided a lesson in electrical engineering so powerful, so brutally efficient, it should be the final exam for every physics student on the planet. Our story begins on a perfect sun-drenched afternoon in Washington State. Our hero, let's call him Rodney, was living the dream, carving up the crystal-clear water of the lake on his powerful jet ski. But as he was miles from shore, his glorious high-speed adventure came to a sputtering, silent end. The battery was dead. It's an annoying but ultimately manageable problem. Rodney, being a resourceful kind of guy, wasn't about to paddle his way back to shore. He managed to flag down a passing boat and get a tow back to a private dock that had a power outlet. He had a plan. A simple, straightforward plan he'd probably used on his car a dozen times. He was just going to give the battery a quick charge. He ran to his car, grabbed a standard battery charger and a long extension cord, and plugged it into the 110-volt outlet on the dock. He then attached the booster cables to the charger, the little alligator clips glinting in the sunlight. Now, here is where a person with a basic, even rudimentary understanding of electricity would have paused. They would have considered the fact that their jet ski was currently sitting in a large conductive body of water. They might have thought, perhaps I should pull the jet ski out of the water first. But Rodney was not a man for pausing or overthinking. He was a man of action, a man who saw a problem and a solution and couldn't be bothered with the pesky details in between. He stood on the dock, holding the live, energized booster cables in his hands, the electricity humming silently, patiently, waiting for a place to go. And then, he made his final, fatal decision. He leaped from the dock, back onto his jet ski, which was, I must reiterate, sitting in the lake. The moment his feet, slick with water, touched the wet surface of the jet ski, he became the perfect bridge, the perfect conductor. The electricity which had been patiently waiting in the cables suddenly had a direct, unimpeded, superhighway to the ground, with the lake serving as the world's largest grounding plate. And Rodney's body was the on-ramp. 110 volts of raw household current surged through his body, using his heart, his nerves, his entire being as its personal conductor. The result was instantaneous and absolute. For a glorious millisecond, he was the world's most effective and most flamboyantly expired human grounding wire. He had successfully connected the power source to the ground. He just forgot that he wasn't supposed to be part of the circuit. 2. In an attempt to evade taxes, a man built a secret, unventilated basement room to hide his assets, creating a monument to his own paranoia and a perfect, self-contained tomb. This is a story about a man who was so terrified of the government taking his money that he ended up paying a price far greater than any tax bill. Our protagonist was a man who saw the IRS not as a government agency, but as a relentless, shadowy monster that wanted to steal the fruits of his labor. He was a fiscal prepper, a man who believed in keeping his assets liquid and preferably hidden. He decided he needed a vault, a secret sanctuary where he could stash his cash and valuables, a place completely off the books and invisible to the prying eyes of the taxman. So he began a secret, ambitious construction project in his own basement. He built a room, a small, windowless, completely sealed concrete room hidden behind a false wall. It was his masterpiece, his personal Fort Knox. He was so committed to its secrecy that he didn't install any ventilation because vents could be discovered. He wanted it to be a perfect, airtight, impenetrable box. He probably spent his evenings down there, counting his money, admiring his own cleverness, feeling safe and secure in his fortress of fiscal solitude. One scorching hot summer, a heat wave descended upon his town. The temperature soared, and his house became an oven. But he had a secret weapon, his cool, underground concrete bunker. While the rest of the world sweltered, He had his own personal, naturally air-conditioned man cave. One particularly brutal afternoon, he decided to retreat to his sanctuary to escape the heat. He went down into the cool, quiet darkness of his secret room, probably with a feeling of smug satisfaction. He decided to take a nice, relaxing nap. He lay down, the cool concrete a welcome relief, and drifted off to sleep surrounded by his treasures, completely safe from the world. But he had created a perfect trap, and he was the only victim. The room was completely airtight. As he slept, he was doing what all living things do, breathing. He was inhaling the limited supply of oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide. With every single breath, he was ever so slightly, imperceptibly, poisoning his own atmosphere. There were no vents to bring in fresh air. There were no cracks to let the CO2 escape. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the small, sealed room began to rise, slowly, silently. It's a gentle, insidious killer. It doesn't choke you, it just slowly displaces the oxygen in your blood until your brain and body quietly shut down. He never woke up. He was slowly asphyxiated by the very air he was exhaling, a victim of his own genius security measures. He had built a room so secret, so perfectly sealed to keep the government out, that it ended up keeping the one thing he needed to survive, oxygen, out as well. 3. Seeking a cleaner cut for his lawn, a man attached sharpened helicopter blades to his push mower's engine. A decision that proves the road to a perfectly manicured lawn is sometimes paved with catastrophic, world-endingly bad ideas. Our story is about a suburban dad, a weekend warrior of the lawn, a man whose entire sense of self-worth was tied to the lushness of his turf. He wasn't content with just a good lawn. He wanted a green velvet carpet, a putting green so perfect it would make the groundskeepers at Augusta National weep with envy. But his standard push mower just wasn't cutting it, literally. It left stray blades, an uneven finish. He needed more power, more precision. He needed a better blade. And as he sat in his garage staring at his trusty mower, a bolt of pure, unadulterated, testosterone-fueled genius struck him. He didn't just need a sharper blade, he needed a helicopter blade. He had somehow acquired a set of smaller, sharpened rotor blades, perhaps from a surplus store or a very questionable online auction. To him, they weren't just pieces of aviation equipment. They were the key to lawn care perfection. He spent an entire weekend on his project, a suburban Dr. Frankenstein creating his monster. He removed the mower's dull, safe, factory-standard blade. He then, with a great deal of effort and a complete disregard for the laws of physics and engineering, managed to rig the heavy, aerodynamic helicopter blades to his mower's small, underpowered engine. He probably stood back to admire his creation, a standard push mower, now sporting a set of blades designed to spin at thousands of RPM and generate enough lift to carry a small aircraft. It looked terrifying. It looked glorious. The day of the first test run arrived. He wheeled his monstrous creation, his Lawncopter 3000, out onto his pristine lawn. He pulled the starter cord. The small engine sputtered to life, and the massive helicopter blades began to spin, slowly at first, then faster and faster. The machine didn't just hum, it screamed. It created a terrifying whirlwind of grass, dirt, and pure, concentrated danger. For a few brief, glorious seconds, his invention worked. The blades were cutting the grass with a terrifying, almost surgical precision. But the tiny lawnmower engine was not designed to handle the immense torque and gyroscopic forces of a set of helicopter blades. The entire machine began to vibrate violently, shaking itself apart. The bolts strained, the metal groaned, and then, with a sound like a gunshot, one of the massive blades, now spinning at an incredible speed, broke free from the engine mount. It didn't just fall off, it was launched. A sharpened, spinning metal projectile, flying through the air with no guidance system and a very bad attitude. Our hero, who was standing triumphantly behind his creation, never even had time to duck. The blade flew directly into his neck. The shave he received was, to put it mildly, extremely close. He had wanted the perfect lawn, but in his quest for a cleaner cut, he had invented a machine that was far more effective at landscaping people than it was at cutting grass. 4. The story of the ultimate fire starter is a chilling tale from the vast, unforgiving wilderness of Alaska, a place where a small mistake can have very big, very loud consequences. Our hero is a man living the rugged, off-the-grid dream in a remote log cabin. He was a true frontiersman, a man who valued self-reliance above all else. But on this particular, brutally cold winter's day, his self-reliance was about to be put to a fatal test. He had run out of firewood. The fire in his hearth, his only source of heat against the encroaching, deadly cold, had dwindled to a few sad, glowing embers. Now, for a man living in the middle of a forest, the solution seems obvious. Go outside and chop more wood. But it was cold out there, and chopping wood is hard work. Our hero, in his moment of chilly desperation, looked around his cabin for a quicker, more efficient solution. And his eyes landed on a can of gunpowder. It wasn't a small can. It was a large, full can, the kind you'd use for reloading hundreds of rifle cartridges. And in his cold-addled brain, a brilliant, terrible idea began to form. He thought, wood burns, gunpowder burns. Why not use a little bit of the fast-burning stuff to get the slow-burning stuff going again? His plan was to just toss a little pinch of gunpowder onto the embers to liven them up. But as he stood there, the can in his hand, his impatience got the better of him. A little pinch? He probably thought, why not the whole can? He decided he would just toss the entire can of gunpowder directly into the fireplace. In his mind, this would create a big, satisfying whoosh that would instantly reignite his logs and fill the cabin with glorious, life-giving heat. He popped the lid off the can, walked over to the hearth, and with a confident flick of the wrist, he tossed the entire contents onto the glowing embers. What he failed to understand is that gunpowder, especially in a large, uncontained pile, does not whoosh. It detonates. The instant the black powder hit the embers, it ignited in a massive, instantaneous, and catastrophically powerful explosion. The confined space of the fireplace acted like the chamber of a cannon, directing the entire force of the blast outwards into the small enclosed space of the log cabin. The cabin, which he had so lovingly built with his own two hands, was instantly obliterated, blown apart in a shower of splintered logs and shattered glass. And our hero, standing directly at the epicenter of his own brilliant idea, was an integral part of that explosion. He had wanted to get his fire going again, but instead, he had succeeded in turning his entire home and himself into a giant one-time-use firecracker. When rescue crews eventually found the site, there was nothing left but a smoking crater and a few scattered logs, a silent, blasted monument to a man who had tried to fight the cold with an indoor explosion and lost in the most spectacular way possible. 5. The man who decided to wrestle a moose and discovered that some weight classes are just not for you is a story that comes to us from the Great White North of Canada, a place of majestic forests, stunning landscapes, and very, very large animals that you should not, under any circumstances, try to fight. Our protagonist, a man whose courage was directly proportional to the amount of beer he had consumed, was having a truly legendary night with his friends. He had just finished an entire case of beer by himself, a feat of endurance that had filled him with a powerful and deeply misguided sense of his own invincibility. He felt like a superhero, a modern-day Hercules, and he needed a challenge worthy of his newfound powers. He announced to his stunned and probably very drunk friends that he was going to go out into the woods and wrestle a moose. Not just see a moose, not just take a picture of a moose. He was going to engage a 1,000-pound antlered beast in a one-on-one, no-holds-barred wrestling match. His friends, in their inebriated state, probably thought this was the most hilarious, most brilliant idea they had ever heard. They cheered him on as he stumbled out of the house and into the dark, foreboding forest, a lone, beery gladiator in search of a worthy opponent. It didn't take him long to find one. In a clearing, he spotted it, a massive bull moose, peacefully munching on some leaves, completely unaware that it was about to be challenged to a title fight by a 180-pound man who was mostly beer. Our hero did not hesitate. He let out a mighty, slurred war cry and charged. He ran at the moose, his arms outstretched, ready to grapple with the giant beast. The moose, which had probably been having a very pleasant evening, looked up, its massive head swiveling slowly. It saw the small, loud, wobbly creature running towards it and probably experienced a brief moment of pure, bovine confusion. This was not a predator. This was not a rival. This was an idiot. The moose did not run. It did not charge back. It just stood its ground, waiting patiently. As our hero got within range, ready to execute his legendary takedown, the moose, with the kind of lazy, effortless power that only a 1,000-pound animal possesses, performed a single, decisive action. It kicked. It was a simple, short, rear leg kick, the kind it might use to swat away a fly. But when that kick is delivered by an animal that weighs half a ton, it carries the force of a small car. The kick connected squarely with our hero's chest. His brief, glorious, and entirely one-sided wrestling career was over. He had charged at a force of nature, filled with the confidence that only a case of beer can provide, and nature, in the form of a very large, very unimpressed moose, had responded with a single, final, and irrefutable no. His friends found him later, a quiet, motionless testament to the fact that some animals are best left admired from a very, very safe and very, very sober distance. 6. The winery worker who wanted to surf the grape wave and ended up in a very bold vintage is a story that proves that even in the most beautiful, idyllic settings, a little bit of alcohol and a lot of peer pressure can create a truly tragic cocktail. Our story unfolds at a large, picturesque winery during the peak of the harvest season. The air is sweet with the smell of ripe grapes, and our protagonist, a young seasonal worker, is feeling good. A little too good. He and his colleagues had been sampling the product throughout the day, and by evening, he was feeling bold, invincible, and incredibly creative. He looked at the massive industrial conveyor belt that carried tons of freshly picked grapes up into the gaping maw of the giant de-stemming and crushing machine. And he saw not a piece of agricultural equipment, but a personal waterslide. A grape wave. He made a grand, drunken proclamation to his laughing friends. He was going to ride it. He would surf the conveyor belt, a triumphant, grape-stained hero, and then gracefully leap off at the last possible second, just before the crushing machine. It would be a short, thrilling ride, a story to tell for years to come. His friends, their judgment equally impaired, cheered him on. They thought it was hilarious. So, with the roar of the machinery in his ears and the laughter of his friends as his soundtrack, he took a running start and leaped onto the moving belt. For a few glorious seconds, he was the king of the harvest. He was literally body surfing on a river of premium grapes, a look of pure, unadulterated joy on his face. He probably gave a triumphant wave to his audience below, but he had severely and fatally underestimated two things: the speed of the conveyor belt and the terrifying industrial efficiency of the crushing machine. The last possible second he had planned for came and went in a purple, sticky blur. He was carried along with his grape-based surfboard directly into the giant, churning metal augers of the de-stemmer. The machine, designed to separate grapes from their stems with brutal, unforgiving force, did not distinguish between fruit and human. He was processed with the same mechanical indifference as the rest of the harvest. His friends' laughter probably turned to horrified screams as he disappeared into the machine. He had wanted to ride the grape wave, but he ended up becoming an unlisted and undoubtedly unique ingredient in that year's bold, new blend. It's a grim reminder that some jobs have very specific and very final consequences for horseplay. 7. The viral video that went under, along with its star, is a tragic comedy from the modern age, a story that proves the thirst for internet fame can be a very, very dangerous thing. Our protagonist is a young Russian blogger, a woman who dreamed of becoming an influencer. She wasn't content with just posting pictures of her breakfast. She wanted to create content that was bold, daring, and, most importantly, viral. On a bitterly cold winter's day, she found what she believed was her ticket to stardom: a vast frozen river. Her idea was a beautiful, romantic, and catastrophically flawed piece of performance art. She was going to prove the strength and beauty of the river ice by carving a giant, perfect heart into its surface. With a chainsaw, while standing in the middle of it, she set up her camera on a tripod on the riverbank, hit the record button, and strode confidently out onto the ice, her powerful chainsaw in hand. She probably gave a cheerful introduction to her followers, her breath pluming in the frigid air, talking about the magic of the Russian winter. Then she fired up the chainsaw, its roar shattering the peaceful silence. She began to carve, carefully, skillfully, the saw kicking up a spray of ice crystals. The shape of the heart began to emerge, a giant, beautiful symbol of love etched into the frozen landscape. Her camera, recording from the shore, captured the whole epic scene. She was a lone, fearless artist, creating her masterpiece. She carved the first curve, then the second. She was almost finished, just one final, graceful cut to complete the bottom point of the heart. She was so focused on the perfection of her creation, so lost in the moment of her impending viral fame, that she had completely overlooked a fundamental and fatal detail of geometry. She was standing inside the heart. With her final, triumphant cut, she successfully, and with surgical precision, sawed off the very slab of ice she was standing on. For a split second, everything was perfect. The heart was complete. And then, with a sickening crack, her perfect heart-shaped ice floe broke free from the surrounding ice and began to drift, before tilting and unceremoniously dumping her and her chainsaw into the dark, bone-chillingly cold water below. Her camera, still faithfully recording from the shore, captured the whole tragic, ironic spectacle. The beautiful ice heart, the sudden disappearance of its creator, and then just the quiet, indifferent beauty of the frozen river. She had wanted to create a viral video, and she succeeded. It just wasn't the kind of fame she had been hoping for. 8. The barbecue that was a little too supercharged is a story that should be required viewing for every dad who's ever stood in front of a grill and thought, I can make this hotter, faster. Our scene is a sunny backyard in Texas. Our hero is a man who was about to host a barbecue, but he was facing a classic, frustrating problem. His charcoal briquettes were being stubborn. They were slow to light, refusing to get that perfect, glowing red that every grill master craves. He was an impatient man, and his guests were getting hungry. He decided it was time to stop negotiating with the charcoal and start issuing demands. He needed an accelerant. He didn't just grab a bottle of lighter fluid. Oh no, that was for amateurs. He went to his garage and came back with a 5-gallon can of gasoline. His first idea was to just splash a little on the coals. But then, a new, more brilliant, and infinitely more dangerous idea began to form in his head. He wasn't just going to light the grill, he was going to create a spectacle, a remote ignition system. He poured a generous amount of gasoline directly onto the charcoal. Then, he created a long, winding trail of gasoline from the grill, across his patio, and back to a safe distance, where he stood, holding the now mostly empty 5-gallon can in his hands. His plan was to light the end of the trail, creating a cool, Mission Impossible-style fuse that would race across the patio and ignite the grill with a satisfying whoomph. He probably felt like a pyrotechnic genius. But he had made a critical and fatal error. He had completely forgotten about gasoline's most famous and most dangerous quality, its fumes. The air between him and the grill was now a thick, invisible, highly flammable cloud. He stood there, at what he believed was a safe distance, holding the open can of gasoline, and struck a match. The instant the tiny flame sparked to life, the entire vapor trail didn't just light, it detonated. In a single, instantaneous flash, a ball of fire erupted, racing back along the trail, not just to the grill but to the source of the fumes. The 5-gallon can he was still holding. The can exploded in his hands like a bomb. He was instantly engulfed in a massive fireball, his brilliant barbecue hack turning him into the main course. He had wanted to supercharge his grill, but instead, he had supercharged his own demise. His guests were treated to a barbecue that was memorable, to be sure, but for all the wrong and very tragic reasons. 9. The battering ram that decided to hit back is a story of criminal ingenuity and a beautiful, if brutal, lesson in Newtonian physics. Our story unfolds in Brazil, where a would-be thief had his sights set on a gun store. He was smart enough to know that a simple brick wasn't going to get him through the reinforced bulletproof glass of the storefront. He needed something bigger, something with more impact. He found his solution at a nearby construction site, a large, heavy, discarded compressed gas cylinder. It was rusty, it was heavy, and to him, it looked like the perfect improvised battering ram. It was a brilliant, if slightly desperate, plan. He wrestled the heavy cylinder, which probably weighed over 100 pounds, back to the gun store. He hoisted it onto his shoulder, took a few steps back, and with a mighty, primal roar, he charged, slamming the end of the cylinder into the bulletproof glass. Thud. The glass held, but he had made a dent. He was encouraged. He backed up, took another running start, and hit it again. Thud. A few spiderweb cracks appeared. He was winning. He backed up one more time, ready for the final decisive blow. He channeled all his strength, all his criminal ambition, into one last glorious charge. He hit the glass with the force of a freight train. But this time, something different happened. The old rusty valve at the top of the gas cylinder, which had been weakened by the repeated impacts, finally gave way. It snapped off. What our thief didn't know was that the discarded cylinder wasn't completely empty. It still contained a significant amount of compressed gas. The moment the valve broke off, the cylinder instantly transformed from a battering ram into an unguided, high-powered rocket. The compressed gas shot out of the broken neck, and with a deafening hiss, the cylinder launched itself, not forward but backward, directly at him. He had just enough time to see the weapon he had been wielding turn on him before it slammed into his chest with lethal force, pinning him against the brick wall of the building next door. His own brilliant, improvised tool had become his executioner. He had tried to break into a store filled with deadly weapons and ended up being taken out by the one he brought himself. 10. The final kiss that was a little too enthusiastic is a story that proves even the most experienced professionals can be undone by a single moment of showmanship. Our scene is a popular marine park in Spain. Our hero is a zookeeper, a charismatic and experienced sea lion trainer. He and his star pupil, a massive 600-pound sea lion, were the stars of the show. He loved the applause, he loved the crowd, and he was known for adding a little extra flair to his routines. On this day, he decided he was going to give the audience a finale they would never, ever forget. He deviated from the script. For the grand, show-stopping trick, he took a large fish, the sea lion's reward, and placed it in his own mouth with its tail hanging out. He then knelt down at the very edge of the pool, leaned his head forward, and invited the massive, powerful animal to kiss him and take the fish. He probably imagined a gentle, almost tender moment, a beautiful display of the special bond he shared with this giant creature, all set to the soaring, inspirational music. The crowd leaned in, their cameras ready. The sea lion, in the water below, saw the fish. It did not see a kiss. It did not understand choreography. It saw a delicious, shiny mackerel, and its powerful primal instincts took over completely. It didn't gently pluck the fish from his mouth. It launched itself out of the water like a blubbery, 600-pound torpedo, its eyes locked on the prize. The animal wasn't being malicious. It was just being a sea lion. It wanted the fish, and it wanted it now. It grabbed the fish with a powerful, snapping motion of its head. But the force of this lunge was immense. The powerful jerk on the fish, which was still clenched in the trainer's teeth, whipped his head forward with incredible violence, slamming it directly into the hard concrete edge of the pool. The sound of the impact probably echoed through the silent, horrified arena. He was knocked out instantly, slumping forward and falling, unconscious, into the water. The crowd got their unforgettable show, but it was a far cry from the heartwarming finale the trainer had planned. He had wanted to create a moment of perfect, human-animal harmony, but he had forgotten that his co-star was a massive, powerful predator whose only motivation was a bucket of fish. The reverse instruction manual has 10 new entries. Now it's your turn to add a chapter. Based on your own life experience, what's the one unwritten rule of survival you think everyone should know? Let's build the ultimate guide in the comments. If you found this safety briefing valuable, hit like. Subscribe for future updates to the manual.